Everybody, it's Anthony Brogdon, and ooh, I got a smooth dude on the channel today. Oh my God, he coming out of that St. Louis, situation, and he what happened was he works at this museum, right? The Griot Museum. He's gonna tell you about that a little bit. And so I was saying, man, I got this show. Because see, if I talk to you and on the telephone or otherwise, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you that, hey, just in case, you work at a Black History Museum. I suspect you like Black history. Check me out, right? My man, he hit me up on the byline. He said, man, I got a story to tell you out of my family. Let me share this one with you. I said, shoot, man, come on this channel and let's get it on. Everybody, if I haven't said just yet, but let me say it right now, I'm Anthony Brogdon, and things are happening here at Strong Inspirations. We are jamming, and you know why we jamming? It's because people like this gentleman right here that has said we got stories, and it's a plethora of stories out there that need to be told, need to be chronicled. You need to hear, and that's what I'm here to do. Hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free. It don't cost no money. It don't ask no information. One lady said, well, I got to check you out before I subscribe. I said, well, do it, sister, and then hit the button. Come on, what you waiting on?
No, that's right.
I got to check you out. I said, all right, check me out. Hit the like button on this video. I know you're going to like it. My man, he nice, happy guy. He smiling and nodding and all that. I know he gonna tell it succinctly. Hit the notifications bell so when the videos come up, you get a ding, a shock, or something that says, ooh, there's more content on Strong Inspirations. And then tell somebody about us. Don't keep it to yourself. Share this. All you can do in one respect is just tell somebody, go to YouTube and type in Strong Inspirations. And what I have noticed, when you type that name in, we're the first one to pop up. There's probably, that's us, Strong Inspirations. And also, you can, you know how you copy a link or something on the video? You can copy the links to the video and then share it on your social media. However you see fit, on your Facebook and your Twitter and your Instagrams and all that other stuff, and share it that way. And I know my man got to go, but I got a couple more things right quick to tell you. Did y'all see my video that I did with the lady, Dr. Diane Stewart? I'm really, really impressed with this sister. She's a professor at Emory, and she talks about Black love and the trauma that Black women have gone through over the years of the abuse of the enslavers and racism in general, and even some of dealing with the Black men who we've come out of that trauma of slavery and didn't know how to relate to them. I mean, you sit there, you just working in the field, my man, the white man call you in, he tell you, okay, I need you to go in the barn, and I need you to go hook up with that sister over there, just because I need some more slaves. Trauma. And so she deals with that. She's well known. How about this? And this is kind of leading into my guest today and what he's going to talk about, which is traumatic, right? There's a lady that I interviewed on the channel who, and she's a big fan of Strong Inspirations. I really like this. She be tweeting me and retweeting me and sending me all kind of happy messages. And I ain't gonna say her name, but she really like. But anyway, I interviewed her, and she found out that her great grandfather, something happened to him, and it had to be he was lynched. Short story. He's a college educated guy. This is about the 1920s, 30s, 40s, whatever, right? I might have been early in that. I got the time wrong. So he owns a little fruit stand because he couldn't get a job. He's doing real well. The white guy says, hey, man, you doing too good. Goes up and slaps the dude. Just, unprovoked, slaps my man. My man said, I know this ain't gonna be good because I'm slapping this dude back. He smacks the man back, knocks him down, so on and so forth. The guy laying there crying and whatnot. My man says, I got to go. He runs home, he get his family, they leave town that night. Just pack what they could, leave town. Well, a couple years go by, my man, he regroups, got his life back together, so on and so forth. His father dies. He's got to go back to the funeral. He says, I got to go to the funeral. He goes to the funeral and they never see him again. He did not make it to the funeral and they never heard from him. Wow. Now, beautiful wife, two, I don't know how many kids, beautiful kids. So it ain't like I'm fleeing my situation. I'm telling you this because I want you, my viewers, to know the depth of the stories that I present to you via my guests on the channel. These are the kind of things, and it's good stuff. I'm gonna give you a good one, and we're gonna end on that. Then we're gonna have the guests come on. There's a black guy who was a blacksmith. He working with the metals and stuff like that during slavery. And he's pretty good. He's probably very, very brilliant guy, as best you can without some formal education. He gets his freedom. My man goes into the horse and buggy business and starts his own company. Mm-hmm. Well, horse and buggies go out of style after a little bit while. Now they motorized. And he built his own motorized cars. The C.H. Patterson was his name, and it's Greenfield, Ohio is where he did this. And at one point, he was competing against Ford. Couldn't beat Ford, that's another story. But nonetheless, I interviewed his great-great-granddaughters. They're on the channel. Watch for that one. So all this is going on. There's a lot happening here at Strong. As you know, I got this movie out. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. That's really my focus is Black business history. And so I did this documentary. It's streaming on Amazon. It's very good. Not because I did it. I had other people tell me that, and I didn't pay them to say it. And then I wrote this book. It's called Black Business Book. You got to get your copy of this. There is no other book out there like this. I have not seen one. Now, there are other books that talk about Black business. They center on one or two or three or four or five people. I got 200 of them in my book. Black business people dating from slavery to 1960. Get you a copy of that book. It's a paperback. It's good. It's thorough, comprehensive, and easy to read. I don't add no commentary. Now, you can learn all about what I'm doing on my website, where you can get these items and so on and so forth, which is businessintheblack.net. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word, man. Ladies, strong. That's what we are. Strong inspirations are where you are at this very moment. And strong means strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to this brother today. He's a strong man coming out of that Missouri community. Come on, man, introduce yourself. Thank you for being on Strong Inspirations.
What's up, everybody? I'm Darian Wigfall. I'm currently the program manager at the Griot Museum coming out of St. Louis, Missouri. Just met Anthony on a phone call. I know you wanted to talk to my employer, but she's less tech savvy, so I opted to be sort of the representative. And we're a Black History Museum, so we're covering stories that are mostly based in St. Louis. You talked about the man that started the wagon company. It was making me think of Hiram Young, whose story we actually tell in our museum about how his wagon actually competed with the famed Conestoga wagon, right? And he was a slave that had this skill, built this skill through slavery, bought his own freedom, then bought the freedom of other people, and had them work for him until they paid it off and then let them go. And his story is crazy too.
Okay, but let me stop you there because that's a good one. Don't forget that. We're going to get into the museum and all the others. But as you said, you watch a couple of videos, and I like doing this because there's a story there about you personally, if you don't mind.
Okay.
You were born and raised where?
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis. How did your folks get to St. Louis? Do you know that?
Roundabout way. So my mother and father met in Louisville when he got his first. So my father's from North Carolina. He moved there for school and then went back to North Carolina, came back to get a job in Louisville, Kentucky, where his college roommate was my mother's cousin. And the universe works in mysterious ways because he actually was an athlete, right? So he graduated from North Carolina A&T in State University in Greensboro and actually had a free agent deal with the Dallas Cowboys. Went down there to try out, saw the contract, and obviously in the 70s, contracts weren't like they are NFL contracts now. So he passed on that and ended up going for a more steady paycheck with this cigarette company called Brown and Williamson. And that took him to Louisville, Kentucky, where he met my mother through his former roommate from college and ended up being her cousin. Now, the way she ended up in Louisville is the story that brings us here, right? So I told you the story, and I actually didn't know this probably till about last 10 years. Grew up, I'm 40 now, about to turn 41 in about a week and a half, and I grew up not knowing this story ever. And then we got a surprise visit from her brother. They're both from big families. My dad has one brother and four sisters, and my mom has one sister and four brothers. Kind of interesting, the opposite reflection there. But two of her brothers were just on a random road trip around the country, decided to pop into St. Louis and came to the house. And, we're just collectively talking, shooting the breeze and stuff like that. And eventually they say, hey, did you know this story about your grandfather, Sidney, who's, her father? And she was like, I don't know if we should tell this story. And I was like, what are you talking about? Now you got to tell the story. And so they were like, well,
okay, hold on. I got to stop it. I don't mean no disrespect because you jamming and I can tell, but I still want to stay on you just a tad. In St. Louis, there's a black and white side of town.
Oh yeah.
Which is what's the black side? What's the white side called?
The black side is the north side and the white side is the south side. And there's a pretty famous divider called the Delmar Boulevard, and it's called the Delmar Divide that basically divides the whole city.
Did you go to the black side of town school and all that, or you was able to go otherwise?
Interestingly enough, my parents moved to the county before it was a county. It was basically all farmland when they moved here in 1979. And so I ended up going, I'm from the west side, technically. And so I went to a county school. Now I live in what they call the Central Corridor, just south of the highway. But I've lived north and I've lived south and I've lived, a few different places around town.
What's the street where the Black Business District was, the main Black Business District?
That was, so it's Martin Luther King Boulevard now. I'm not actually sure what it was called before, but what's currently now Martin Luther King Boulevard was the Black Business District. And we have another district that sort of mirrored that called the U-City Loop that's still thriving now, but the MLK is like,
Sure. Why did Black people move to St. Louis? What was the industry that attracted them there?
There's a couple industries that brought them here. Beer was number one, Budweiser, the Budweiser plant being here. But there's a few other companies that are based out of here, like McDonnell Douglas, that was just getting started around the time of the Great Migration. Purina, dog food, and I think there's one more that I'm missing right now, but yeah, those are all headquartered here.
Well, why what's the connection with beer? And I know the company, but is that where they get the hops or something like, or the guy just happened to live there or something like? Is that?
I think it was because of the trading. So German and French traders used to use St. Louis as like a hub back in the 1700s. Is that right? Okay. And so he just set up shop. He was a German trader. The Anheuser family was a German trading family, and so they set up shop here just because you could ship it up and down the Mississippi River, but you could also ship it across the country on wagons and stuff like that. So that's why they set up here.
So the Mississippi River runs through a downtown.
Right next to downtown. Comes right around our downtown.
Okay. What has there ever been a riot in St. Louis?
Not in St. Louis, but in East St. Louis. Which is right across the river. So East St. Louis, if your audience isn't familiar, kind of colloquially was the Little Chicago, right? So when people like, not Bugsy Siegel, what's Capone, Al Capone would have people get in trouble, he'd send them down to East St. Louis so they could still be part of the business, but not be, you know, in close proximity to the danger, right? And so there's big gambling, big sex work stuff over there. And like, it was a huge industry. And there was a lot of industrial, just like farm work, like hail, baling hay and things like that. So East St. Louis at one time was a very thriving city. And at the time that this happened was sort of around the time of the bombing in Oklahoma. So this is 1917. There was a riot in East St. Louis because there were economics. It was economics. There were blacks that were living in East St. Louis that were coming over and getting jobs in St. Louis. And some of the people in St. Louis decided that had to stop. So they went over and terrorized these people. Over 100 black people died. I think 5 to 10 white people died. But like businesses were destroyed, homes were destroyed, men, women, and children were killed. People died trying to like jump in the river and swim back across.
How far swim is that? Is that a big river between the two?
It's pretty big, and it's flowing. The flow is what's going to take.
Yeah, right.
It's crazy. So like, it's probably about a half a mile wide.
Yeah. Let me just jump back one more. Do you know where the plantation is in your family?
I don't. Well, actually, I do on my dad's side because luckily enough, luckily or not luckily enough, we all stem from, I just found this out a few years ago too, we all stem from this one plantation, and it's one family, small family called Wigfall, which is my last name.
Yeah.
You know, and so online, there's a group on Facebook called the Wigfalls, right? And so we're kind of tossing around like, hey, where do we come from? We're all from South Carolina. Okay, we're all from South Carolina. Is it all from this one area? Yeah, it's all from this one area. And then people that are still there were like, there's actually a street named Wigfall here, and there was a store called Wigfalls, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? Come to find out that was the name of the slave owner. It actually stems from a tree in southern England, like called the Whig tree, which is where the British people got their name, moved here, and then had a plantation in South Carolina. And I'm part of the Gullah Geechee people, so we were actually able, on my dad's side, able to keep our identity and practices and things like that because we lived on Pawleys Island, just off the coast of South Carolina, versus like the inland enslaved people that would have been unable to keep their traditions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. So all this kind of led you, and then hearing that discussion of what happened to your grandfather, to like Black history, what led you personally to be who you are, let's say?
It's interesting that you're into Black business. I think my first interest in the Black business was finding out who Ralph Bunche is. And I was, when I was 6 years old, I remember writing a rap about Ralph Bunche for school. And if people don't know, go look him up, Bunche with an E, Ralph Bunche. Look him up. He's a great businessman, Black businessman, and, you know, had a bunch of different industries and things like that. And then I found out who Garrett Morgan is, the inventor, made the stop sign, refrigerated trucks, and all these other different things. And so my curiosity into like inventors and people that were able to like make a bigger situation out of a small situation, I think got me into Black history. And so I've been into it since I was in elementary school, for real.
Are there some Black business owners out of St. Louis that many people do or don't know over the years, and going back even, you know, the years gone past?
Going back, you would probably know the name Madam C.J. Walker. So she studied here under a woman named Annie Malone, who actually stayed in St. Louis. So
really?
Madam C.J. Walker came up from Mississippi, stayed in St. Louis for a while, and was a washerwoman for Annie Malone, who actually invented the product that Madam C.J. took and marketed better. Not took, but like she was able to recreate it in her own way and then marketed it. And so Annie Malone is a business owner. Annie Turnbow, Turndo.
Yeah,
Malone
that's right.
is one you should know.
Is there a historical marker for her in St. Louis?
She's got a street. I don't know if there's an actual marker, but there's an Annie Malone Boulevard. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
On the north side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Currently, I think if anybody knows the name Dave Stewart, he's one of a few Black billionaires now, in the U.S. He actually runs a company called Worldwide Technology. And he's one to know of. If you don't know of him now, he actually has a book out called Doing Business by the Good Book. So he's talking about doing business with a Christian kind of focus and lens. But yeah, Dave Stewart is probably the only Black billionaire in St. Louis, but one of the few in the country. So.
Sure. Was there a Black person that has something to do with making their own beer? You know, just kind of copying off that guy? Is there?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because I feel like,
we had something to do with it.
Yeah, there's a whiskey called Uncle Nearest, and this is because Jack Daniels just admitted to a Black man coming up with their recipe.
That's right.
So I'm thinking, and just like you were talking about the car maker, like there's rumors that Ford is the one that took his blueprints and then ran off with it. It
might be something like that.
That story happens over and over, so I wouldn't be surprised, and especially in St. Louis. And I didn't find out this till I started running a venue that was in an old church, converted church. That the Germans and Blacks and enslaved Black people had a very close relationship here and did a lot of business together, especially on the south side of St. Louis. So that makes me think that the Budweisers and Anheuser and the Bushes all were like dealing with Black people that were kind of helping them innovate, right? But they don't
really?
Yeah. There's another big story about, there's a guy named York, and I don't know how much you want me to talk about the museum, but
we're gonna go into York. That. Yeah.
There was the only Black person on the what do they call the Corps of Discovery with Meriwether Lewis and Lewis and Clark. So he was the one that actually did most of the translating. He's the one that actually got Sacagawea on the trip with them. He would go and talk to Native peoples, Black peoples, or whoever they needed to talk to beforehand so that Lewis and Clark, being white people, wouldn't scare them too quickly. And so he was sort of their intermediary. And no one I'd never heard his name before. They said on the trip, when you get back to St. Louis, we're going to give you your freedom. When they got back, they didn't free him. They literally separated him from his wife, put him on a different plantation, and he drank himself to death because he had helped the U.S. government basically discover America. And they said they would give him his freedom, and then they didn't. You know what I mean? This dude named York. So, and he's from St. Louis, was enslaved in St. Louis, I should say. And that story over and over.
And you just said this, enslaved in St. Louis. Missouri was a slave state.
Yep, last one.
What do you mean by the last one?
So if y'all are familiar with the Missouri Compromise, this was a rule that said Kansas is going to be the first free state, which is why its nickname is the Free State.
Right.
If Missouri can maintain its slave category, status, right? So in order for Kansas to be free, Missouri literally had to be a slave state. And then after Kansas was instated, there were no other, I think, pretty sure not long after that, slavery was abolished, or at least the Emancipation Proclamation was given. So no other states after that were given that slave status, but Missouri was the actual last one to be given a specific slave status.
Was Missouri under this? There plantations that you all know of?
Definitely. There's actually a slave cabin in our museum that comes from Jonesburg, Missouri, which is about 40 minutes west of St. Louis. And this was a plantation that had 16 standing slave cabins on it. And we got one. It was actually a WashU architecture group that deconstructed it and then reconstructed it in our museum. But we got one of them. And it's sort of small, so we think it's like it was a work cabin. It wasn't living quarters. But
what's a work cabin? What does that mean? What do you think that meant?
So basically like woodworking. It would have been like a shop where they could cut things and you can still see the axe marks in the wood, which is kind of crazy to be able to kind of touch where our people built this thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, just 40 minutes west. And I'm sure there were some. St. Louis was a sundown town, and if y'all are familiar with that.
Yeah, go into that one,
Yeah, so like up until probably the civil rights era, within the city limits of St. Louis, you couldn't be here if you were Black, right? After
really?
Sundown. Yeah, after sundown, you had to be out. If you worked downtown, you had to be out, and you had to leave by sundown. And so With the Great Migration, obviously, white flight took everybody out to the county. So now Black St. Louisans are able to stay in the city, and then they built the Project Pruitt-Igoe. If y'all are not familiar with Pruitt-Igoe, Pruitt-Igoe. It's this project, famous project, designed by a Japanese designer in the heart of St. Louis for when white flight took most of the white citizens out. And then, of course, after that, it was no longer a sundown town. But up until the early 1960s, you couldn't exist in the city limits and be Black or brown or Chinese.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the 60s?
Yeah, up until the early 60s.
Wow. Now, are there when there were slaves in St. Louis, did they always try, not always, but did they try to escape to Kansas? Was that their underground component?
Definitely. There's quite a few stories of folks that, especially after they met up with Native peoples, escaped to Kansas to be able to come free. And Illinois, when it became free, there are stories of folks going that way. So Missouri is an interesting state because we're actually surrounded by 8 states. We touch 8 states that are around us. A few of them, well, no, 2 of them before were free. So like Illinois and Kansas were free before Nebraska, before Missouri, before Iowa, before Arkansas. And so slaves would go to those states to be able to get freedom. Sometimes they would be extradited back to be re-enslaved, but a lot of times those are the 2 states that they would go to, is Illinois and Kansas.
Well, when they went to Kansas, how did they get there? Could they boat across that Missouri River? Was that some scenario?
Through the woods, because the Missouri actually leads you up into Iowa, which at the time wouldn't have been free. So they would have to go through, sort of like an underground railroad situation through wooded areas and hide. And there's a few stories of people, white people that were abolitionists in Missouri that would hide folks, but yeah, they would have to hide in the woods or in somebody's house basement,
yeah, sure,
and things like that till they cross the border.
Did John Brown participate a lot in fighting against slavery in Missouri or just in Kansas, or do you know that?
That's a good question. I think it's more Kansas, but it might have been Missouri too. I know most of his stories are from Kansas, but yeah, probably Missouri, I would imagine. Yeah.
Now, Missouri being a slave state, I know it didn't try to succeed from the Union. Do you know of their position in that, or they were kind of lukewarm? Were they very defiant in Missouri?
It's interesting. I think Missouri is sort of a microcosm of the country, and St. Louis for that matter, that like it was literally brother versus brother, mother versus daughter.
Oh, really?
And, father versus son. There were a lot of split families in Missouri when it came to that. But then again, we have Confederate cannons in the park that's just a mile up the road from me. So like, and there's a big Daughters of the Confederacy group here too. So like, but we consider ourselves very progressive. So it's interesting because we have both mindsets here, and you kind of see, honestly, you can see even now, young white people kind of going against the older white people that aren't trying to progress in their thought and things like that. So Missouri was a very split state when it came to the Civil War and things like that.
Is Missouri below the Mason-Dixie line?
Just below. It runs across the top of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So which means it's a southern state, that understandably.
Yeah.
Just a couple more, one more question on that. So are there stories, did the Civil War happen in Missouri?
Yep. There's
some
battles.
Fighting of the war?
No famous battles, but there's definitely some battles that were fought here in St. Louis too. But yeah, St. Louis, Fulton, and maybe a couple other cities had some pretty big skirmishes.
You mentioned those cannons. What were those cannons to shoot at?
the Union, and I don't think they're active anymore. But
yeah.
You could tell that they were used, because in TV or cartoons you see the cannons with a big. Big opening, but these are the ones that have the regular size cannon shot. So these were used, and they look like they were used, and they're like the insignia on them is from like 1860 or 1861. And there's like 2 or 3 of them in the same park. People have tried to get those removed. They did remove a Confederate statue a couple years ago.
Of who?
But those remain still as a reminder that Civil War battles were fought here in St. Louis.
Who was there a famous general when you talk about of the statues? Who do you remember who the statues might have been of? Wasn't Lee and all them kind of cats, was it?
I don't think so. So Henry Bernard Shaw is a famous St. Louisan that owned slaves, but I don't think he was in the war. Let me look up. Sterling Price comes up first.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So he's seems to be the most famous
general or something general. Like that.
Yeah, General Sterling Price.
Okay. Now you alluded to this earlier. There were lynchings in Missouri.
Definitely. I'm not familiar with the plethora that happened, but our museum just, I guess, signified one of the first known and recorded lynchings in America that happened in 1836 here. There's this kind of like outdoor park called Keener Plaza here downtown in St. Louis. That's actually directly across the street from the old courthouse where the Dred Scott decision happened.
Okay.
There's a man named Francis McIntosh. Obviously, McIntosh comes from a slave owner, but Francis McIntosh and Francis, for that matter, he was a businessman, and he was trying to operate within the city. There were 5 gentlemen that said, "You can't operate here. You need to go," and went to the police. They had him arrested. The police arrested him, put him in the jail that was downtown at the time, and then instead of just leaving him alone and letting that be, those 5 men went and got more people. And they say that the story goes that about 100 people showed up to this jail later, dragged this man out of the jail cell, and then lynched him in the area that is now what we call Keener Plaza. And so what we did a few weeks ago was collect soil from that space. And now we have some at the Griot, some went to the lynching memorial in Alabama, and then another jar of dirt is going to a Black History Museum in Kansas City to kind of balance out the Missouri representation there. But yeah, so at the very least, one of the first recorded lynchings in American history happened right here in St. Louis.
Really?
Yeah.
You would think that would have happened somewhere deep south in South.
You would think, right?
Yeah, you would think. Yeah.
But the thing is, they didn't record them down there. They didn't write about it back then. So like, this is the first one that ended up in like a paper type of thing.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, I got you. Now I'm going to get to your story about that, but you before I don't lose this, the Dred Scott case. What is that? What happened there?
There's a lot, man. There's a lot to unpack, but I'm sure most folks have heard of the name Dred Scott.
Right.
But basically, and you should know also the name Harriet Scott, and because she had a lot to do with it as well. So Dred Scott was an enslaved person. Harriet Scott, an enslaved person that he was married to. Dred Scott found a way or found a resource to be able to try and sue for his freedom. He sued. I think the first time was like 1826, I want to say.
Really?
And he was denied. And there was a famous quote from the judge. I gotta look it up so I don't butcher it. But there's a famous quote from the judge about not having to obey anything a Black man said. What did the judge? He said, "All people of African descent, free or enslaved, were not United States citizens and therefore had no right to sue in federal court." So basically he's saying that because you're not a full person, you don't even have access to the laws that we are abiding by.
Right.
Right. And so over the course of, I think, 30 years, multiple cases, Missouri Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court, Harriet's getting involved, having to move around, having to move their family around, finally was able to sue for his freedom and her freedom. And that decision was a result of a case that happened right in the courthouse that was right downtown here in St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a statue of Harriet out front that signifies that case.
Oh, did they win that case?
They won. They finally won. Multiple different tries, actually multiple lawyers, I think 2 or 3 lawyers. Finally won.
Okay, how about this? And maybe you can look it up if you don't know. What was his basis for being able to sue for his freedom?
I think it was, if I remember correctly, I got to look at it again in the museum, but if I remember correctly, The basis was that he had lived in a free state previously, and that status gave him a right to be free wherever he was, regardless of state or location.
Oh, okay. Now I'm jumping around everybody because my man is jamming. He's jamming, and he got a lot to say. And I'm sorry, folks, but follow me on this one. Let's go back to this other story about the lynching. Mm-hmm. You had told me something happened in your family.
Yeah. So when my uncles came to the house, they were like, "We want to tell the story about your grandfather, our father, that you probably don't know. And it's the reason that we lived in Louisville, Kentucky." And I was like, I always knew that my mother was born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and moved to Louisville when she was 2 years old. And I was like, why would they uproot a child so young? And she's the oldest of the family. So I was the first child. And I think probably my grandmother would have been pregnant when this happened, because her sister is only a year and a half younger than her. So I was always like, why did they uproot a child so young and for her to be pregnant? And so them coming to tell the story, they were like, okay, look, this is what happened. Your grandfather had a brother that was lynched in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He, having this knowledge in his head, decided that he was going to take out the justice on his own. He went and found the person that was responsible for the lynching. He didn't find everybody that was involved in lynching, because lynchings were public events back then, but he found the person that was responsible for getting him lynched and killed that man, right? And immediately left town. That, similar to the story you were telling about, left town that night. They moved to Louisville because he had family in Kentucky. He also knew about a Byerly Ford plant, again, Ford giving a lot of Black people jobs coming up from the South. And so he moved up to Louisville, Kentucky, got a job at the Byerly Ford plant, and lived out the rest of his life there in Louisville. And from my knowledge, was never able to go back to Tuscaloosa. Now, my mom has gone back, and, from time to time, their side of the family will have family reunions, but he's skipped them, and he's not been able to go back, just in the chance that the people that he hurt are still there, or family of the friends of the people that he hurt are still there and might want to take out revenge on him. Now he's passed, but it was after he passed that they told the story. And like, I never knew this sort of thing, but it just dawned on me that this probably happened way more people than I realized. For it to happen.
You don't know the story of why they lynched him? Had you heard that part of it?
They don't know this. The conjecture was that he had, it was similar to
something with a white woman.
Yeah, it was similar to Emmett Till.
There's always a white woman in the picture, man.
Got interested in him, or somehow pointed him out as somebody that she was interested in, and the man was not having that. And so,
did he have to change his name when he fled?
That's a good question. I think that's a good question, because his last name is Jones. But his last name is Jones, so it's very easy to blend in. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he actually changed it to Jones, or if it was already Jones, because I don't know much about what happened before that. But his name is Jones, so I know he kind of used that to be able to kind of hide in plain sight. So,
could you imagine if that's the case, that there was a police report or you know what I mean, or some kind of writing that, okay, we lynched the guy. I mean, that might have went public, and now, anything like that in some document, maybe.
You know what? I should look that up, because I know the time frame it would have been. It would have been around sometime in 1948, because my mom was born in 46. Okay. So I wonder. I should actually look into that. Maybe I can do some follow up with you, and maybe say if I find
that's interesting. Yeah. So all this has led you to like Black history, and so the museum that you work for, why is it called the name it is? What's the history of the museum?
So it's actually pretty interesting, the name and my family coming together, because my family comes from a long line. So the name is the Griot, Griot, and the T is silent, long O. But my family comes from a long line of griots. My cousin Veronica actually like worked for the University of South Carolina or South Carolina State, and used to go around the country telling the story of Gullah Geechee people. So much so that I found one of her cookbooks.
Yeah,
right here.
Plug it, man. Plug it, man. We on plug
the
it.
museum. So this is the Gullah cookbook. This is my cousin Veronica Gerald and her friend Jesse Edward Gant. And so this is all about Gullah style cooking, and it also is pronounced in the Gullah style of English. So
okay.
With the Gullah Geechee, you kind of have the French background, the African background, and a little bit of American. So it's kind of a broken English. But the griot is a storyteller, and the griot is also charged with keeping the stories of the community. So this is an African tradition that comes up through us to here to the U.S., but it's a long thousands of year tradition of like one person being charged with telling the stories to the kids and like getting the stories from the older people so that none of the culture ever dies. And so
I love it.
The name griot comes from that. And I know this museum wasn't originally named that. It was actually the Black World History Wax Museum when it was founded in 1997, but the name was changed in 2009 because the griot is sort of more appropriate for what we do. So
who was the founder? Who was the founder?
Lois Conley. Lois Conley is the founder. She's the main artist. She actually created most of the wax figures you see in the space. And it's a combination of her and another gentleman that knows how to build the figures. So she built the bust and like the hands and things like that. And then there was another man that like built the bodies as well.
So that is one of the main exhibits of the museum is a bunch of wax figures. I don't mean to say that loosely, but that is what you all are.
That's right. It's a Black wax figure museum. There are only two technically of their type in the country. The other one's in Baltimore.
And you all have wax figures of who?
We got
not all of them, but yeah.
I honestly would like to have more, but we have Carter G. Woodson, who starts it off because he's known as the father of Black History Month. Some wax figures that signify the Middle Passage. Then it kind of goes into pioneers. So we have William Wells Brown, who's a pioneer in writing and law for Black people. We have John Milton Turner, who was the first ambassador to Liberia under, I want to say it was one of the Roosevelts. But yeah, he was the first ambassador to Liberia. We have a ship that signifies John Barry Meacham because in St. Louis and Missouri, it was illegal to teach Black people to read or to educate them. So what he and his wife did to get around that was buy a riverboat then go and dock it in the middle of the Mississippi River and pick up Black children every morning on the bank of St. Louis and East St. Louis, and then dock it in the Mississippi River, teach them all day, and then take them back to the dock so that they could teach them sort of legally. It still was technically illegal, but they couldn't regulate the water law, so they were able to do it out there. So John Barry Meacham. We have Elizabeth Keckley, who was a great seamstress, enough so that she bought her own freedom. And then after she bought her freedom, actually made Mary Todd Lincoln's inaugural gown. So President Lincoln's wife's inaugural gown for when he got into office. We have York, who was the trader and like Black lead explorer on the Lewis and Clark discovery journey. We have Clara Brown, who was enslaved in St. Louis, but when freed, actually helped found Denver, Colorado.
That's right.
Move west.
That's right.
We have George Washington Carver, who, if you don't know about him, go check him out. Has so many patents I couldn't even count. So many different products for the peanut, and was an artist too, which I
didn't know that.
Learned more about. Yeah, he actually was able to make. He would make dyes and paints from like natural flowers and things like that, and then make paintings. We actually have a print of one of his paintings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an interesting fact about him I never knew before I saw him.
I didn't either.
Then we have Madam C.J. Walker, who is sort of like signifying the story of Annie Malone and like women empowering themselves and things like that. Hiram Young, who I mentioned earlier, who had the wagon company that actually competed against the Conestoga Wagon Company. And then we have some famous St. Louisans in entertainment, Josephine Baker, who grew up in the Mill Creek Valley area.
Oh, did she?
France.
Mhm.
Before she moved to France. And Miles Davis, who was born in Alton, grew up in East St. Louis, and then played a lot in St. Louis because this is where like, it's pretty happening for music here. Like Ike Tina Turner played a lot of the blues legends played through here.
Was there a
Uh,
particular venue?
there's yeah, it's gone
Yeah,
now.
yeah, sure.
But what was it called? Um, I want to say it was in the Orpheum family, but it wasn't called the Orpheum Theater. It's one of their
Okay, okay. Wasn't a
theaters.
black-owned theater.
No,
Okay, okay, okay,
theaters.
okay.
And so Clark Terry, who actually is another trumpeter, who actually come to find out, mentored Miles Davis as they were coming out because he was a little bit older.
Hmm.
And then we had a state senator who was a very big figure, J.B. Jet Banks. And then we have some more kind of like civil rights figures. We have Mackler Shepherd, who's a local guy who actually helped revitalize a whole neighborhood on the north side in the 90s and actually incorporated, the whole neighborhood so they could get resources and be a nonprofit.
Mm.
We have Percy Green, who has two major things in his life. He climbed the arch with another white activist to protest the fact that black contractors weren't included in the bidding for building the arch. And that was in the 60s. But he also had the case that set the precedent for being able to sue your employer on the basis of discrimination. He was discriminated against at McDonnell Douglas, which is now Boeing. And then his case then became the precedent for that because he was, I forget what there was. Yeah, like you said, there's always some little legal angle that they
Sure,
use.
sure.
But there was some angle that his lawyer was able to use that set the precedent for being able to sue on the basis of discrimination.
Sure.
And in that same room, we have Dred Scott, Harriet Scott, and the attorney that ended up helping them win their case, Roswell Field. He's the only positive white person in the
Oh,
museum.
is he? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then we got Martin Luther King because he used to come here a lot.
Oh,
And
did
so
he?
so we have pictures of him with clergy that he would visit. He came here and raised a lot of money from the Jewish community here. And there's a church downtown called Christ Church Cathedral that he would visit quite often, and Washington Tabernacle. So there's a few churches that he used to come to, and they have pictures of him with the preachers from those.
Sure. Now you also mentioned that you have the slave cabin at the museum.
Yeah.
As an exhibit.
That's right.
Do you all have a particular events throughout the year? I mean, maybe like Juneteenth, or is that your Emancipation Day? Is Juneteenth what you all celebrate, or is there another day?
That's how I celebrate. I know a lot of folks want to celebrate on July 4th, but I celebrate on June 19th.
Yeah.
And typically we do have a Juneteenth art show and sale, but now that Juneteenth has become a federal holiday, a lot of other people have kind of like taken some initiative to have events. Sure. So we're more I guess participating in other people's events more than having our own thing. But we'll still have some events. We still have like people come and do storytelling, griot, things like that.
Sure.
And this year is actually our 25th anniversary, so we'll be having an event for that later on.
Yeah, the reason why I said that though in that regard is I met somebody out of Kentucky and Tennessee. They celebrate August 8th.
Okay.
Yeah, wow. As their Emancipation Day, because the guy who was the governor, Andrew Johnson, who later became president, but Andrew Johnson had slaves and he released them on August 8th.
Wow.
I was told that I think it's Texas, they celebrate May 20th.
Okay.
As their Emancipation Day. So there's different places that might have some significant meaning. As we come to a close, what is where is the museum located? What is there a building that has a historical significance as to why it's there? That kind of thing.
It's interesting, but I think it's more of a reclaiming situation because this is a building that was a school for an old church called Sacred Heart Church, and that church was built in the late 1800s. So it would have been in a time of like Reconstruction when no Black people could have gone to that church, right? And so in between it being that church and our museum, it was kind of a medical resource facility. So, radio station first, and then it was a medical resource facility. And then my founder, Lois Conley, bought it in 1997 and then converted it into the museum that it's in now.
But it's in downtown St. Louis, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we're actually, it's wild how these things happen. We're actually in a space that is just north of a Black neighborhood that was completely displaced by a governmental body called the National Geospatial Agency. And so I did some organizing with the people that lived in the neighborhood in the like mid 2000s. We were ineffective because of eminent domain, but if people are familiar with geospatial mapping and things like that, the governmental body that does that for our military is in St. Louis. They used to be on the south side next to the Budweiser plant.
Oh, really?
They wanted to move. They actually wanted to move to Illinois, Scott Air Force Base, but I won't qualify him. Our former state representative, U.S. representative, state representative, Lacey Clay, bid so that they would stay here in St. Louis, so that we could have the jobs and the benefits. So they ended up displacing a whole neighborhood. This one lady actually had lived there for like 72 some years, so she ended up like having an architecture. Well, she basically beat up the city until they gave her enough resources to get an architecture team to lift her house foundation and everything up off the land that it was on and move it a block away, so that she could maintain the house but not have to lose it to the NGA. So we're just north of the NGA. We're on a street called St. Louis Avenue, right at the corner of St. Louis Avenue and 25th. But we're on the north side, very much in view of the divide that the city.
Really? Okay. And what's the website for the museum, and how people can come and support you all and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we're open. If you're from St. Louis or in St. Louis at any time, come through. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can go on the website, thegriomuseum.com. Make sure you put the THE in front. THEGRIOT.
Yes.
That's EUN.
Right. Okay.
And then we're on social media, the Griot Museum, most social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay.
And if you want to email us, you can email us at info@thegriomuseum.com.
Sure. I guess one more, and I do this every so often. Is there a question that I have not asked you? I didn't want you to have something that you said, I want to say this, and I didn't ask to get it. Anything like that just kind of comes to mind per se? Not really.
That I could think of.
Okay.
You're thorough. I appreciate your interview.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I didn't want to, any plug. Is there a book that the museum has or something like that we plug?
There isn't one that we produce, but there is a book by a man from St. Louis named Walter Johnson called The Broken Heart of America. And it really kind of explains how St. Louis is sort of a microcosm for the country. And just like what I explained with Pruitt-Igoe, the Delmar Divide, all that stuff is like in great detail. He talks about that. The Sundown Town piece, he talks about that stuff in great detail. So if there's a book that I'd say represents us well, it's Walter Johnson, The Broken Heart of America.
Yeah, and how about this for your cousin? Let's hold up that Gullah book again. Let's plug them. Yeah.
And
where can you get that?
You can get this online. Let's see. It's called The Ultimate Gullah Cookbook.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get the website.
Yeah, we plug in on this channel.
Yeah, I'm with it.
It's the plugger, man. It's the plugger.
Look on Amazon for The Ultimate Gullah Cookbook. G-U-L-A-H.
And if I do get a website, I'll put it in the description. Well, hey, to you, my brother, I say this, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. As you down there preserving that history and you enlightening them folks and telling them about St. Louis and not just St. Louis, but Black history in general, American history, and that you've done this and that you sat down and you heard these stories and that they impressed upon you and you've chosen this as your life mission to make this your career path, to be who you are. And so I say this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing, brother. And tell the lady, what's her name?
Lois Conley.
Tell Lois Conley I said hi. And everybody, we coming down there to St. Louis. Because aren't y'all known for ribs or what do y'all?
Oh, yeah, barbecue. We got great barbecue.
Yeah, that's what I heard. The great barbecue, St. Louis. And then you can get you a beer and so on and so forth and hit the district and hang out down there in the St. Louis area.
On the website, if you want it.
Yep.
It's www.shop.ultimategullah.com.
There it is. We thorough on this channel, everybody. We thorough. Hey, man, thanks a lot for coming on here. I'll stay in touch, all right? Tell everybody I said hi.
Will do.
All right, brother. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.